I remember the exact moment I saw him, like a needle dropped in the middle of a quiet room. His name was Elias. It was a Friday night, humid and thick with summer. I had just gotten out of the shower when I heard laughter from the living room. My brother, Daniel, always had someone over, usually loud, forgettable people. But this voice was different, low, smooth, touched with something unbothered. I wrapped a towel around my waist and stepped out, mostly to tell them to keep it down. That's when I saw him. Elias. He was leaning against the kitchen counter, drinking orange soda straight from the can. Tanned skin, tousled black hair that looked like it had been styled by accident, and a jawline carved like he never had to try. His t-shirt clung to him like it had no choice. He glanced at me and said, "Hey." Just that. A small, effortless hey that turned my brain inside out. "Hey," I replied, too slow, too obvious. I could feel the towel clinging tighter as my body betrayed me. Daniel grinned. "That's Elias. We went to high school together. He's crashing here tonight." "Cool," I said, but it wasn't. Nothing was cool. I stood there, still damp, frozen. Elias looked me over, eyes trailing down and back up with a flicker of interest. Or maybe I imagined it. I disappeared to my room. Locked the door. Dropped onto the bed. "You have a boyfriend," I reminded myself. Julian. Kind, reliable, boring Julian, who'd been working overtime all month and barely replied to my texts. But he was mine. Or I was his. Or we were something. Elias was nothing. Just my brother's friend. But that night, I couldn't stop hearing his voice through the wall. Deep laughter. Slow drawl. I pressed my pillow to my face and tried to pretend I wasn't already in trouble. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen alone, pouring coffee with one hand while scrolling on his phone with the other. He wore only boxers and a loose tank. I stopped, stared. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Morning," I croaked. I opened the fridge and pulled out juice just to do something with my hands. "You're Daniel's brother, right?" I nodded. "Mason." He finally looked at me, then smiled, soft, almost lazy. I figured. That smile made my stomach knot in a way it hadn't in years. Not since Julian used to kiss me like he meant it. "You live here too?" he asked. "Sometimes. When rent sucks." He laughed. "Respect. Daniel said you're a photographer." I shrugged. "Something like that." He watched me for a second longer than normal. "Cool." That was it. But it wasn't. I felt it, an invisible thread tightening between us. We moved around each other in the kitchen like dancers pretending not to touch. Our arms brushed once. I pulled away too fast. He noticed. For the rest of the weekend, Elias was just there. In my house. Shirtless on the couch. Singing in the shower. Laughing with Daniel in the living room while I paced in my bedroom, burning with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hunger. Longing. Danger. Julian called Sunday night. We hadn't talked in 3 days. "Missed you," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "Same." He told me about work. I lied and said I was busy with editing. I didn't mention Elias. I didn't say I had spent the whole day noticing the way his jeans fit when he leaned over to grab the remote. That night, Elias knocked on my bedroom door. "Got a smoke?" he asked. I didn't smoke. But I followed him outside anyway. He lit one, offered it, then took a drag when I refused. We sat on the back steps in silence. "You seem quiet," he said. "Just tired." "From looking at me?" I looked up. He was smirking. Half joking. Half not. "Ego much?" I said. "Only when I'm right." He flicked ash into the grass. "You stare a lot." I didn't answer. My mouth had gone dry. "I don't mind," he said, quieter now. "Just saying." I wanted to say something back. Something clever. Or honest. But all I managed was, "Okay." He smiled again. Not teasing this time. Or dangerous. Then he stood up and said, "Night, Mason." He left me there, heart pounding, legs numb, hands shaking. I stared into the dark, wondering what the hell I was doing. What I was allowing to start. Because something had started. I could feel it humming under my skin. For 3 days after that night on the steps, Elias didn't bring it up. No comments. No smirks. Nothing. Which made it worse. Because I couldn't stop thinking about it, what he said, how he said it, the heat behind his words that had clung to me like a second skin. I told myself to stop. Told myself it was harmless. Told myself I loved Julian. But Julian hadn't called again. Elias was still at our house. Daniel had some excuse. Elias's place was getting fumigated or his roommate had someone over. Whatever. I didn't ask. I didn't want the answer. He moved around like he belonged. Took his coffee black, always barefoot, his voice filling the space before I even walked in. Every day blurred a little more into the next, and every time I passed him, the space between us grew thinner. Like we were balancing on a tightrope made of silence and glances. Then came Thursday night. Daniel was out with friends. Elias stayed behind, said he had a headache. I stayed behind, said I was editing. We both lied. I was curled up on the couch, pretending to watch something on TV, when Elias walked in, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. "You looked like you needed this," he said, handing one over. I hesitated. "Do I? You've had that same tired look on your face since I met you." I took the glass. He sat beside me, close, too close, and stared at the screen without saying anything. The silence between us pulsed. "Why are you really here, Elias?" I asked. He turned his head, slow, like he already knew the question was coming. "What do you mean? You could crash at anyone's place. Why my brother's?" A smirk. "Because I liked the idea of meeting you." The air snapped. I laughed nervously. "Bullshit." He didn't laugh. Just looked at me. Steady. Focused. "You're not easy to ignore, Mason." My breath caught. "I have a boyfriend," I said, even though the words sounded limp. "I know," he replied and sipped his drink. "Does he even know you?" That hit. Harder than I expected. "Don't," I said, looking away. "I'm just asking," Elias said. "Because I watch you and you walk like you're half a ghost. I don't think he sees you." I stood. I needed space. Oxygen. An escape. But Elias followed. Set his drink down and leaned against the wall, watching me. "I shouldn't say these things," he said, voice quieter now. "I know that. But I'm not good at playing safe." I turned, leaning against the kitchen counter, gripping it like it might anchor me. "I think about you," I whispered, shocking even myself. He stepped closer, slowly, like I might bolt. "I know. One step between us. One step from crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed." "I won't kiss you," he said, voice husky. "Not unless you ask." I looked up at him, eyes burning. "Why?" "Because I want you to mean it." I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Elias's voice echoing in my skull. I wasn't sure what scared me more, the guilt, or how badly I wanted to ask him to kiss me. The next morning, Julian texted. "Hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying. "Busy. We'll talk soon." Elias was in the kitchen again, half naked, humming to himself. I couldn't even look at him. He handed me a mug of coffee without a word. Later that day, Daniel announced they were going to a house party that night. I said I wasn't feeling up for it. Elias said he might stay in too. Of course he did. By 10, Daniel was gone, and I was pacing the hallway like a lunatic. I stopped in front of Elias's door, hand hovering. Then I turned and went back to my room. Closed the door. Locked it. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Then a knock. I opened it. Elias stood there in sweatpants and a plain white shirt. Hair wet. Smelling like something expensive. "I'm not here to mess things up," he said. "But I can't pretend anymore." I stared at him. "Then don't." He stepped in. Shut the door behind him. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. We just sat on my bed, shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same air. And somehow, that was more intimate than anything I'd ever shared with Julian. At some point, Elias whispered, I won't force this. But you should ask yourself, are you still in love, or just in a relationship? I didn't answer. He stood, gave me one last look, and left the room. The silence he left behind was deafening. It happened on a stormy night because of course it did. Thunder cracked through the sky like the universe was warning me. But I didn't listen. By then, it was too late. I had already led Elias into places no one else had been, not just my room, but my thoughts, my nerves, the spaces inside me that Julian hadn't touched in years. Daniel was gone for the weekend, visiting our parents. I'd planned to spend it alone, maybe call Julian, fix whatever was fraying between us. But Elias never left. I figured I'd keep you company, he said casually, like it didn't mean anything. But it did. That night, we watched some movie neither of us remembered 10 minutes in. The rain pelted the windows, thunder in the distance, the lights flickering once, twice. We sat closer than we needed to. I could smell his shampoo, still faintly sweet from his shower. His thigh brushed mine. I didn't move. He leaned over to whisper something about the film, and when I turned my head, our mouths were inches apart. We froze, breathing in the same breath. Waiting. I told you, he murmured. I won't kiss you unless you ask. My heart was a drum, my throat tight, but my mouth moved. Kiss me. It wasn't a whisper. It was a command, and he obeyed. His lips were soft but sure, his hand finding the back of my neck, guiding me into something I had been starving for. I kissed him back like I had something to prove, like I needed to remember what it felt like to be wanted without apology. The kiss deepened. My hands slid under his shirt. His breath hitched when my fingertips grazed his skin. Bedroom? He asked between kisses. I nodded. We didn't rush. It wasn't desperate. It was deliberate, reverent. Like we both understood we were crossing a threshold neither of us could come back from. Clothes fell away like secrets we didn't want anymore. The bed creaked beneath us. His body was warm, solid, real. There were no lies between us in that moment. Only truths made of skin and sound and need. And when it was over, when we lay side by side, tangled in sheets and silence, my guilt arrived. It wrapped around my chest like cold wire, cutting off breath, thought, reason. What now? I asked. Elias turned his head to look at me, his expression unreadable. Now we live with it. He didn't say he loved me. He didn't say it was a mistake. He just lit a cigarette and handed it to me. I didn't smoke, but I took it anyway. That night, I stared at the ceiling long after he fell asleep beside me. The shape of his body under the blanket was beautiful, dangerous. I traced it with my eyes like it might disappear if I blinked too long. Julian texted at 3 a.m. Miss you. Can we talk tomorrow? I didn't reply. In the morning, Elias was already dressed, tying his boots by the door. You leaving? I asked, still sitting on the edge of the bed. For a walk. Just needed air, he said. He didn't kiss me. Didn't even touch me. Just gave a small nod before stepping out, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The next few days were messy. Elias didn't bring it up. He was casual, flippant even, teasing Daniel, cooking breakfast shirtless again like nothing had happened. I hated it. I hated how easily he moved through my world while I was unraveling. Julian called. I let it ring. He called again. This time I answered. Are we okay? He asked, voice hesitant. We're tired, I said. What does that mean? I don't know yet. I didn't tell him. Not yet. Because even though I had slept with someone else, I didn't feel ready to let Julian go. Part of me still wanted to pretend we could patch the cracks, but pretending was getting harder. Every time Elias brushed past me, every time our eyes met, I remembered how his hands had felt, how I had begged for more. One night, he cornered me in the hallway. You're quiet. You're distant. He shrugged. We got what we wanted. Is that what it was? Just that. He looked at me then. Really looked. Do you want it to be more? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. And then Julian said he was coming to visit. Booked a flight, he said on the phone. I want to fix this. Panic shot through me. Because I was still bleeding from a wound I'd asked for. And now the person I betrayed was walking back into my life with forgiveness I hadn't earned. I hung up and stood in the dark of my bedroom, the smell of Elias still faint in the air, and asked myself a question I wasn't sure I could answer honestly. Julian arrived on a Tuesday. I stood in the airport terminal, stomach twisted into knots, watching him walk toward me with that soft smile I used to love so much. He looked tired, flatter than I remembered. His eyes searched my face like he was looking for the version of me he left behind. Hey, he said. Hey. We hugged. It was mechanical. Familiar arms, unfamiliar warmth. His hand lingered on my back too long, like he was trying to rekindle something that had already cooled to ash. In the car, he talked. About his job, about his flight, about some podcast he'd been listening to. I nodded, added filler where I could, but my mind was somewhere else, trapped between guilt and a memory of Elias's lips on my neck. When we got home, Elias was gone. Daniel said he left earlier that morning. Said he needed space, he added, oblivious. Didn't say goodbye. The emptiness in the house echoed. Julian noticed. Was that your brother's friend? Elias. Yeah. Huh, he said, pulling his suitcase into my room. He seemed intense. I swallowed hard. Yeah. We had dinner together. I cooked. Julian cleaned up. It was civil. Routine. The kind of evening that used to mean comfort, but now it just felt like pretending. When we lay in bed, he reached for me. Kissed me gently. I let him. But it wasn't real. It wasn't fire. It wasn't Elias. Afterward, I curled up facing the wall. Julian spooned behind me, his breath warm against my shoulder. I still love you, he whispered. I stayed silent. Because what do you say to someone you've already betrayed? The next day, I found Elias's sketchbook on the kitchen table. I hadn't known he drew. Flipping through the pages, I saw quick pencil sketches of rooftops, city streets, and then me. Me asleep on the couch. Me sipping coffee. Me, in profile, laughing at something I didn't remember. My hands shook. I tucked the sketchbook away before Julian could see. That afternoon, Julian and I sat on the back porch. The silence between us was heavy. Real. I know something's wrong, he said. I looked at him. He deserved better than half-truth. I slept with someone, I said. He froze. What? His name's Elias. The silence that followed wasn't just silence, it was implosion. I watched his chest rise and fall. His jaw tensed. He blinked too many times. Was it just sex? No. He let out a dry laugh. Of course not. I didn't plan it, I said. But I let it happen. And I think part of me needed to. Julian stood. Backed away from me like I was radioactive. How long? He asked. Just once. But it wasn't just once. Emotionally, it started the moment I saw him. Julian stared out at the garden. The wind caught his hair. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Why didn't you just break up with me first? I was scared. Of what? Of being alone. Of making the wrong choice. Of losing someone who's always been good to me. He turned to face me. I was good to you. I know. That's what made it harder. We didn't cry. We didn't scream. He left that night, suitcase in hand, without slamming the door. And just like that, Julian was a memory. Days passed. Elias didn't return. Not a message. Not a word. I didn't chase him. I let the quiet settle. I thought about the way his fingers had traced my spine. The way he made me feel visible. Dangerous. Alive. But I also remembered how he walked away without saying goodbye. How he left me to sweep up the pieces alone. 1 week later, I got a text. Hey. I've been giving you space. But if you want to talk, I'm here. I stared at it. Typed, where are you? Downtown. Painting a mural. Want to see it? I did. An hour later, I found him on a scaffold, covered in splashes of red and gold. The mural behind him was abstract chaos, swirls of energy and tension, nothing soft, everything raw. "You came," he said, climbing down. "Of course I did. I heard about Julian," he said carefully. "I told him." Elias nodded. "How'd it go?" "As bad as you'd expect. But honest." He reached for his water bottle, took a sip. "So now what?" I looked at him. Sunlight caught in the sweat on his skin. His eyes, stormy and uncertain, met mine. "Now," I said, "we start real. No lies. No fantasy. Just us." He looked down, smiling slightly. "You sure you're ready for that?" "No," I said. "But I want to try." He stepped closer. "Then try." He didn't kiss me. Not yet. But his hand brushed mine, and that was enough. Sometimes the ending isn't clean. Sometimes it's messy, human, cracked with guilt and laced with desire. But sometimes it's the beginning of something that finally feels true.